Hi, this is Kit. I am starting right into the footage from my second oxalic acid dribble treatment, and I had a couple surprises when I peeked into my hive. So I'm cutting into my comb to kind of free it at the top using another tool that I have that I don't particularly like using, but I was trying to be fast, go figure. So it's this kind of long knife that you can use on like 6 different bars at the same time. So you can kind of see that I was freeing it there, and that just lets me go in with the Hive tool and break off the propolis to start my inspection. So what my purpose was today was to prepare for a second oxalic acid dribble. I also wanted to check on the status of the different brood cells that I identified last time as being very young brood. So you can see there, I'm actually like using the flashlight to kind of look around, see what's happening. Everything is capped. So this was what I thought was like either eggs or very, very young larvae. I think it was eggs the last time is what I marked this comb as. So I am just looking at it and making sure that everything is right. It was all capped brood. So I sliced into my another 6 bars at a time and was just kind of quickly opening all of this up. And I come across my surprise pretty quickly after this. So what actually ended up happening is I had supersedure cells appearing on my comb. So I think that this is where I saw my first one. In the end, I had about 7 supersedure cells. So supersedure cells differ from emergency queen cells because they're usually towards the perimeter on the top bar. So you can kind of see there, it's that very long looking thing right there toward the top of the screen. That's a supersedure cell, and it has a queen that's very mature in it. So she's capped off, and they can do this if there's young enough eggs and larvae for them to switch from rearing brood to rearing queens. The difference between a female worker and a queen bee is simply the food that she receives. Isn't that mind-blowing? So that's where if you lose a queen, the workers themselves can actually go ahead and help to cultivate a new queen, a virgin queen. So the place that I had my queen caged was toward the front of all of my hive, and I kind of gave her space. I thought, oh, this will be enough, but it was too far away from the rest of the bees. It was too far off. So that's a lesson learned. If you cage your queen and keep her in the hive in order to induce a brood break, you need to make sure that she's located in the heart of the brood, and that's where I left her at the end of this inspection. So you can see there is a swarm cell. It's empty. It's that little kind of odd looking cell off the side, and that is where they're ready for eggs to be laid into it. It's prepared for like a supersedure or for a swarming. Like I would consider that a swarm cell, but it doesn't have an egg in it, so you can't grow a queen without an egg. So I'm just inspecting the remainder, and you can see there's more of these supersedure cells off the side. There's 3 right there. I kind of partially squished one that I'm poking at. It was intact, but I'm not confident that queen's going to be super great in there. And again, ultimately, I found, I think, about 7 or 8 of those supersedure cells that were completely closed off. So they had capped them. The queens were inside. And this happens when the hive thinks that you have a queen that's failing because her pheromones aren't strong enough. And so the place that I had my queen located wasn't central enough. So her pheromones were present in the hive where she was caged, but it wasn't present enough. Okay, I wanted to show off right here. There you can see some remaining capped drone comb. It looks like little popcorns, or it's not popcorn. It's like the puffed corn candy, or not candy, cereal. Puffed corn cereal, like corn pops or something. That's what it kind of looks like on the frames. So I just wanted to point it out. That's really where the mites tend to be. So I'm trying to persist through, the cycle of drone combs. Now at this point, after seeing supersedure cells, I was not certain if my queen was going to be alive. Like, I didn't see emergency queen cells. It's just Supersedure, but I thought, oh, I'm not sure she's going to be alive anymore. But she was. So she had some bearding that was on the queen. So that tends to happen when you smoke your hive. They just kind of beard for a little bit. So I'm not sure you'll be able to see her through the workers that are on her cage, but she's in there. And as it turns out, you should not use masking tape in your hive because the bees eat it. So she had almost been freed through the bees munching her masking tape. So I'm going to leave her, and I'm speeding up the footage after this because I literally walked away for probably a good 10 to 15 minutes because I needed to figure out what I was going to do. I had 7 Supersedure cells with queens in them, and basically the decision that I was facing was whether I kill those Supersedure cells, so I open them up to destroy the queens that are developing, or split my hive. I have a second top bar hive. In the case I have a swarm develop, then I can split my hive, but I don't have bees in it right now, so it's empty. And ultimately what I ended up deciding to do is I did a super minimal split where I moved over all of the cells that had Supersedure cells, all the top bars that had Supersedure cells, and then I gave them a couple frames of honeycomb, and then 1 or 2 empty frames, and then the Supersedure cells had some capped brood in them, so they were getting some babies that way. And I think really I went in and researched it, the basic that you need to start a split is with 5 bars, and I think I gave them 8, so it's not a huge amount. But I was missing through this whole time because I really wasn't certain what I should do. I just hate the idea of opening up a cell to destroy the bees. And I know that's probably a distortion on compassion when it comes to beekeeping, that sometimes you have to make hard decisions. But I wasn't ready to kill 7 developing queens today. So ultimately what I decided to do was go for a split. So what I'm going to do here is after I secure or resecure my queen cage, I'm going to use some twisty ties. Those are typically my favorite thing to secure a queen with. So you can see I have some twisty ties there. And I actually even brought my queen inside to tie her cage off with some yarn to keep her from escaping prematurely. I just wanted to be able to identify what was happening in the top bar and really have an induced brood break. So I wanted her to remain in this cage. So I'm securing her with these twist ties, and then I'm going to walk away and actually with her, and I'm bringing her inside without her attendants, and I'm just tying her off with some twine inside of my house on the width of her cage, because there's a little flap that comes up and then it frees the entire top of the cage. I might show that off next time when I can free her, when I'm at the end of my induced brood break. But for now, I wanted to keep her in her cage. I wanted to complete this treatment. So I'm trying to get all of her workers off, all of her attendants off. And I'm noticing at this point that her cage is not secured, that she's going to walk right out. So I decided to try solving the problem of having, well, first of all, there's no eggs in the hive that the worker bees can feed to turn into queen bees. That's something that has to start within the first 3 to 5 days of a worker bee's life. There are no eggs right now. So the major risk to maintaining my caged queen off to the side is that I would have a laying worker develop ovaries and start laying males. So they would be laying just drones, because an unfertilized, an unmated worker bee, she can't lay female workers. So if you have a laying worker and you don't have a queen, it's kind of doomed for your hive. So I'm trying to prevent at this point a laying worker from developing ovaries. So I decided to solve it by placing my queen in the heart of the brood. Now, I ended up losing footage. My camera just turned itself off for some reason. So at this point, I'm preparing for my oxalic acid treatment, and I'm also inspecting to make sure that I find all of these of the supersedure cells. So I ended up pulling off 4 frames that had supersedure cells on the side. So you can see toward the end, before I lose my footage, I found 2 top bars that had those on them. And I remove them from this hive and I place them in another hive. So I'm going to actually show some footage of that second hive at the very end of this video. But after I remove the top bars that have supersedure cells on them, then I'm going to do my oxalic acid treatment, which is not going to be captured in any footage, but I used the same method as last time with the syringe and the dribbler and the 5 milliliters or so. The one difference was I used my syringe to kind of pick up excess drips that were on the top bars, because the drips don't do anything. Like, the oxalic acid with the sugar syrup has to land on a bee in order for it to be a mite treatment. So here you can see I'm like spacing out my top bars, preparing them for treatment. You have to have a little bit of space, so enough that you can get the oxalic acid drip on them, but not enough space where you're going to be missing them entirely. So it's kind of this special, it's similar to like the spacing in a ling. Now there's my lost footage. So it's going to come back. And again, I completed my oxalic acid treatment. I put my queen into the center of the brood, and then I put the hive back together. This is my second hive. So I've already transferred the supersedure cells into this hive, and I gave them like 2 frames of honey, a full frame of like hatched out, not very, like pretty much empty cells, and I'm giving them some 2-to-1 sugar to water sugar syrup to just in case, to feed them. And this is a risk. I'm really not sure they're going to have enough population to maintain themselves until the queens emerge, fly, mate, and then start laying eggs. I'm not sure. So I'm risking some lives of bees. This is kind of like a small package as far as the population in here. And then any older bees that are forager bees, what they will do is they will fly out of this hive, and they're going to go back to their original hive because they actually know its geolocation. The bees that will stay are the young bees who are not flying yet. They will stay in this hive. They will take care of all of the newly hatched eggs, and they'll help the queens, and ultimately the final queen, the final winner. So you can see I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 bars that I'm hoping to maintain this hive with. And this hive is a newer hive. I've not really used it very much. I had some deaths in here last year when I tried to do a split, but this has a window behind it that I can actually look at these girls without getting into the hive. It was a little bit sticky because I haven't been opened in a year. You can see in there's like one of those supersedure cells that may be a little bit squished against the window. You can see the sugar syrup and all the other activity. So it gives you a little bit of a snapshot of the hive, which I am happy for. And at this point, I have 1 more week to go before I complete my oxalic acid dribble treatment. And I'm just going to hold my breath and hope that I don't have any more surprises. And I'll put together footage for next time to share with y'all in case it's helpful to others. And if you have questions about anything, feel free to leave them in the comments. Cheers.